Part of our work as people who have come to this land is to look at reconciliation and how can we, there was a lot of trauma
for sure.
on the Indigenous people on this continent. So what can we do to try to help heal that? And I don't think we don't have the answers. We don't have a perfect answer. Mm-hmm. And if you look through the Truth and Reconciliation work, there's many, 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 many calls to action and many ways in which people can come into harmony with that.
Welcome to the Light Cellar Podcast, brought to you by Light Cellar, a place where you can learn to find and craft your own food and medicine. In this interview series, you will meet a range of characters in the health and wellness space that are bringing light to your everyday. You'll hear from a number of different experts on a wide variety of topics. We have several different series within the podcast, including our Wild Wisdom and Storytelling with Blaine Andrusic, the Rays of Light, inspiring wellness in the community, plus solo casts, Q&As, and other topics for you to enjoy. You can find this as a video version, as well as the audio on any of your favorite platforms. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this with somebody you know who will benefit. You can also shop online at lightcellar.ca. Hello, Herbal friends. Welcome to another edition of Herbal Highlights with Angela Bewick.
And Malcolm Saunders. Dun, 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 dun.
All right, cool. I love the dramatic music.
I wish I had like a hockey keyboard, like a hockey game,
right.
Yeah. I wouldn't know how to play it, but it'd be fun to have.
Right. You just need somebody to follow you around, and then just
and
play
then
that.
they can, like a Weird Al style kind of holding, Anyway, we digress.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, we're going to, this time around, we're going to chat about some hot topics.
Hot topics. Herbally related, still a herbal highlight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always with the herbs, but...
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So
Malcolm, Malcolm, he's an agitator. So I'm just over here...
I'm a maximizer,
slightly tachycardiaing. Just kidding.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's good.
It's good. It's all out there. This is discussion. Feel free to get involved.
Kindly, with kindness.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so a lot of this originated when we first started. We brought in the sweetgrass, and so we recently did a post about this, like how it came to be. We made the hydrosol. We have the sweetgrass available. And so it was a man with Indigenous blood, with connections to Indigenous community that came to me he had an old bottle of sweetgrass hydrosol, and he's like, "Hey Malcolm, like, can you make this?" Like, he knows I make hydrosols, and he'd been having trouble finding a good supply and one that he really loved, and he's like, "Let's try it out." He's like, "I've got."
And the reason too, I think it's important to say why he wanted the hydrosols.
Yeah, for sure. So in his work, which spans all the way from palliative care to all kinds of contexts, right? So he's going into hospice, he's going into hospitals, he's going into other kind of public places, and sweetgrass is really a huge part of his work. And naturally, these institutions are like, "What? You want to burn something in here?" Even though they know his, kind of ethnicity and his cultural, ceremonies, that kind of thing. Purposes. Yeah, just smoke in public places, like burning, it's a bit of a taboo. So he's like, I really, the hydrosol is just a no question. Same effects, same like energetic space that he's able to bring people to. That was just like, that was his purpose of why he wanted it.
Yeah.
And
because you can just spray the hydrosol.
Yeah.
It's a water, for people who don't know, I'm sure everybody knows, but it's the water sort of extraction from the heating of the plant herb matter.
Yeah, and so you can either do a hydrodistillation, which is like put the plant in water and then let the steam rise and then recondense, or you do a steam distillation, which is just boiling water instead of more of like a tea, and then as the steam rises, it passes through the plant material, pulls all the aromatics, recondenses, or you can do a hydro steam distillation, which is a combination of the two. Absolutely amazing.
What do you do for your hydrosols?
Oh yeah, so it depends on what I have actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so it depends on the plant, but with the sweetgrass, we actually tried it both ways.
Okay.
So I tried just a pure steam distillation, and I tried just a hydro distillation, and we went with the combination is best. And in his own words, he's like, it pulls like, all the deep notes as well as the high notes. So it was a nice full spectrum. That's what he loved the most and was getting the best feedback on, though both were amazing.
Yeah.
And choices, there's certain factors like rose I currently only do as a hydro distillation. And it's just purely functional because if I fill the chamber, which with rose petals, as soon as they get wet, they just like collapse and like almost like seal it up.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I can fit way more rows in the kind of the big base versus just the column.
Yeah.
So I'll put a little bit in the column, but things like cedar or things like sage, like, it's great in both. Yeah. So that's generally what I'll try and do.
So a lot like any sort of tincturing or prep of it always depends on the plant.
Yeah, for sure. And some plants really just don't work or translate into hydrosols, even though, there can be benefit and even medical literature around it, like red-belted polypore, like I did just an experiment of a hydrosol with that. And you can even find references for being really good for the gut and the digestive system, but I mean, absolutely zero aromatics, like when people are like, this is just water in here, but
like I swear it's more than that.
Yeah, I mean it is, and it's got all these like, things dissolved into it, but really what works best are the things that are aromatic, because it's like, wow, you feel it.
Which sweetgrass really is. It's a very special, the aromatics are part of the kind of secret to the medicine too, because they say when you are harvesting sweetgrass, if the plant wants to be found, it will let you know. You'll smell it.
Right.
If it doesn't want to be found, it won't. It'll keep it to itself.
Keep it to itself. So.
But carrying on that theme,
no, that was perfect. Really, we need to establish that, and so he's like, well, let's do this, and we worked out an arrangement, and he's like, you know what, you should really be offering sweetgrass braids here too, and like he has a connection to this community in Manitoba. He described it as like, we've got 4,000 braids in the warehouse, and just looking to, get it out there into the world. And then I met his buddy, Nisha, Indigenous man as well. And so he does all kinds of like fairs and trade shows and, market booths and that kind of thing. So he's now got the sweetgrass out there and they put their own label and brand on it. And great guys. And I says, guys, like, I'm going to get roasted, like just knowing the herbal community, knowing, it's like, I'm just a white dude, like selling sweetgrass, like, or making medicine with it. Like, I'm going to get roasted. And he's like, oh, and so I was kind of like asking for like, what's my defense here, Yeah.
Or asking also like, how is this appropriate?
Right, totally.
Another word we're going to get into shortly, but
yeah, for sure. Is it appropriate?
And what
totally double meaning. Okay, we'll come back to that, right? And he says, yeah, don't worry, just remember when someone is paying for or buying sweetgrass, they're not paying for the grass, they're paying for the labor that went into,
especially the braids.
Picking and braiding and doing all that. So for sure, this all these funds, go back to that community in northern Manitoba.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really interesting kind of take on it, spin on it. Yeah, you're paying for the labor. Sure, the grass is free. It's out there. It's growing abundantly in the wild. And those with the knowledge and, the tradition are out there, harvesting and braiding. And it's a beautiful thing.
It is. And I had this question as well because part of our work as people who have come to this land is to look at reconciliation and how can we, there was a lot of trauma
for sure.
on the Indigenous people on this continent. So what can we do to try to help heal that? And I don't think we don't have the answers. We don't have a perfect answer. And if you look through the Truth and Reconciliation work, there's many calls to action and many ways in which people can come into harmony with that. But I think having the conversation about it is really important. so people understand that we aren't just profiting off of sacred medicine. All of the medicine in our shop to us is sacred medicine. There's nothing that is, valueless or that we don't honor. So
and it comes from a huge spectrum of different cultures. So one of the women that works here, her cultural background is Greek.
Yep.
And there's a lot of herbs for her in her culture that's very sacred, like bay leaf.
Yep.
And
how many people we know just throw bay leaf mindlessly into a soup pot,
right?
And then take it out at the end and throw it away.
Or that it's not even, and I'm just going to poke a little bit, I'm going to play the other side, the devil's advocate.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Because, why not the cultural appropriation of bay leaves, or we were talking earlier, maple syrup,
Yeah, that's a very special food to many indigenous cultures. You and I come from Celtic backgrounds, and there's a lot of plants that are very sacred in Celtic medicine and Celtic ceremony. And so I think, like I said, we're not gonna have the answers of what exactly is correct. And there will be people listening, watching this who will disagree with us, and many who will agree. And I think it's not our job to necessarily try to make everyone happy, but it is our job to make sure that we are being respectful and considerate and thinking about how we can we are a business, how can we use that, which I think you do a very good job at already. How can we take that sort of profit, the business mind, and how can we put it into places in which it can help a greater, not just people, but also the planet and certainly the plants.
Yeah. And, just on that quick little note, I was the person that hated capitalism, I hated business. It was money and marketing that were everything that was wrong with the world. And I didn't want anything to do with it. And it wasn't until much later, I'm maturing, just like when I was a vegetarian, of just this kind of hardcore, milk is murder, vegan, angry attitude. And it was a maturing into what I would describe, and what was described to me as an indigenous wisdom, an adult growing of okay, in order for you to live, something must die.
Yeah, life feeds on life.
Life feeds on life, and it's
no matter what your diet.
Super humbling, right? Yeah. And there I was on this kind of righteous pedestal, going boink, just completely knocked off.
Yeah.
And okay, now where do I stand? I got to stand in humility. I got to stand in honoring. I got to stand in the sacredness of eating
and the nuance around everything. And as we had said earlier, the intention. What's the intention?
Yeah.
Is the intention of our business, of our any sort of medicine making we do, what is the intention? And the intention is always to heal, not to harm. So I think that's... Yeah.
And so business, just like money or currency, money or currency, either one, because they are different, is neutral. I don't inherently see it good or bad. It's just a tool,
it's an energy.
It's an energy, and there's a transfer, and it's just the exchange that we all use. And what's the famous quote of Jesus? The money is the root of all evil. In fact, what he actually said was the love of money is the root of all evil. Right? When you take this kind of neutral, energetic thing that has power, can be used for good, can be used for bad, and you're because when you...
It's almost the miserliness of it.
Right.
The attachment, holding on, there's a lack of generosity in that is not appropriate.
But yet, here's something that every single person on the planet, has an interaction with as a part of our life. And it's a real issue for some people. And then I think that's the roots of money's bad and business is bad. And it's no, they're actually neutral. And I would even argue they're one of the greatest forces of good.
They can be, for sure. Especially when the intention is there to propel others forward as well.
Totally. So anyway, so we wanted to kind of bring this in with herbs, and then our word of the day would be, because tied in with this is appropriation, right? So what is definition? What is appropriation? We had to go all the way back to appropriate, which
Appropriate. There's two
Appropriate.
words.
Yeah. So,
two meanings to this word.
as an adjective, especially suitable or compatible, fitting. Those are some synonyms. It's an appropriate response, right? Remarks an appropriate occasion. However, appropriate, same spelling, but just slightly different pronunciation as a verb, to take exclusive possession of, to set apart for or assign to a particular purpose or use. And then number 3, really kind of what it comes down to take or make use of without authority or right. And it was so interesting. They give, how in definition, they'll give you examples. So the example is natural habitats have been appropriated for human use, meaning natural habitats appropriate, like,
there's
is it not our birthright?
There's a real.
We live here on Earth.
I think this is a Cartesian thing. I can't remember which philosopher kind of pushed this into the forefront.
Right.
This idea that humans are separate from nature.
Right. I think, therefore, I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this idea
We're
that
above.
Natural habitats that have been appropriated for human use.
Right.
We are natural beings. We are part of nature. Like, this is
Right.
literally, we are exactly the same as the trees. And I mean, I'm talking on a deeper level here, not. Now we know what that means. It means that there have been natural habitats that have been sort of what's the word?
Yeah, without respect, without
Yes.
like this is ours and like nobody else.
Very
which
short-sighted
Totally.
use of land.
humans are
Yes, we're-
definitely at fault for that, right?
absolutely. Which is, I think, what this means.
Yeah.
But there is also that idea of separation that it bothers me a little bit.
Totally.
Thinking about.
And again, you
us.
have like two ends of the spectrum where, one is like, we are greater. I think, therefore, I am. We are above nature. We're outside of this. We have dominion over. And then there's the other side that's kind of like sees us similarly, but like a curse, like just our very existence,
Yes.
on this planet, within nature, we're inherently destructive. We're inherently like
greedy.
We shouldn't be here. And just the fact that we are, is like destructive. Yeah. To nature. I don't believe in either, personally.
It's probably it's one of those things. It's circumstantial.
Yeah.
It depends on what exactly you're looking at in the whole grand scheme of it.
Yeah, I'm with you that we are a part of nature and we have a responsibility through our consciousness and our, both reason and intuition to kind of, engage and interact with all beings.
You know about confirmation bias? That's the similar negativity bias. Like when all you think and see is one thing,
right? Yeah,
that's
totally.
all you'll notice.
Yeah,
and that's really what will come up.
Right.
Whereas there's a lot of people, and we know many of them in this community, who think like, or kind of approach nature a little bit more like us, where it's like, we are part of this, and it's very humbling, and it makes us now look at these plants as sacred medicine and not just as something that we can exploit, that we can profit off of. That's not the goal. And so maybe that's something we can instead appropriate, is that notion of being a part of nature and not. It's a very difficult topic to discuss, and I personally have a lot to learn.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's a hot button topic.
Yeah.
And I'm, in this conversation, I wanted to play just a little bit of the devil's advocate, kind of pushing back on this kind of like humans are a curse on the earth.
Yes.
And all they do is create destruction. It's like, white dudes, all they do is come and appropriate, like indigenous medicine. Yeah, and there's again a bit of an unfairness. Like, I totally get it. Truth and reconciliation. Like, how do we move towards that? How do we honor that? And like, there's also a bit of a double standard. It's like, it's what humans do. It's like humans take on and learn and exchange like the alphabet. What culture came up with that?
Yeah, that's what our Greek friend had said. She's like, I don't want you using my alphabet anymore. I'm like, that's a very good point. There's a lot of. It's partly how we evolve and function, but I think I see, and I might be completely ignorant, I am completely ignorant about so many things, but this might be just my like cheery-eyed optimism, but I feel as though we're moving towards a place where we are recognizing the past errors that we have made, and not necessarily just us, but our ancestors, and then understanding how to move forward in a place of peace and love. Like, these plants are all so amazing, and we don't ever want people to come in and feel uncomfortable or feel as though we are, behaving inappropriately around, especially Indigenous sacred medicine, because we are here on this land. So, know that there has been thought put into it. It hasn't just been...
Totally. Yeah. And let me share a story about Palo Santo. So this comes from Ecuador. I've been to the area where this grows, connected with the plant, learned so much about it, and it's totally fascinating. So in Ecuador, it's what they call the dry coastal rainforest region, which unfortunately much of it has been deforested. But interestingly about this, just
for profit, I bet.
Just for side note, well, what is profit? Sure, yes. there's greed, there's excess, but yes. It's like, it's energy. It's a form of energy. It's like I'm not against, like...
It is easier. A lot of the beneficial and generous actions that, for example, the shop is allowed to perform is due to profit. Like, there's a lot we're able to generously give to people who need it.
Totally.
As a result of that.
Let's even take a farmer, right? Like, so when they plant seed, every seed that they keep to plant the next year is their reserve. Anything above that would be quote unquote profit.
Yeah.
I want a farmer to be like 1,000% profitable,
yes,
because otherwise
absolutely.
I don't eat, and neither does he. So it's like,
or she.
Or she. Or they, or
or
them.
They or them.
However, it's all good.
Yeah.
So anyways, Palo Santo, you actually have to let it naturally die, fall in the forest, and it develops the flavor, the aromas.
Oh.
You can't just come in and like chop the trees down and like,
hope
we're
for
going
the
to
best.
harvest.
Yeah,
And
let it ripen in the truck.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Doesn't work.
Oh, wow.
So anyways, the reason that we have Palo Santo, I have this in my hand, is due to one man who's Italian. So he was on vacation in Ecuador, and this was back in, I'd have to check my numbers again, the 80s, the 90s, something like that. Anyways, and so Ecuador had a state of emergency. The whole country shut down. This man was like, in the midst of like a national crisis, like stuck in this little coastal town, no way to leave for at least 3 weeks. And during that time, he absolutely fell in love with the people, the culture, the landscape, and in particular, like Palo Santo. And he's now completely devoted his life to reviving what you could describe in this book here, which is kind of written about him, the magic and medicine of Palo Santo, which, for whatever reason, the Ecuadorians who are indigenous to that land, and so is this sacred wood, had completely lost. And when I observed it there, what the Ecuadorians use Palo Santo for is insect repellent. That's it. It's not sacred.
Wow.
It's like nothing. Like the
modern...
modern...
that could be sacred depending on the insects, to be honest. But I get you.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
like
it's like
common everyday use.
Like
how do they
hunks
use it?
Of wood, just like burn.
And then they burn it. Oh, kind of like we do with citronella, say for example. Okay.
Yeah, it's a natural DEET. Okay. And that's all it is to them. So
it's good to know, actually.
Yeah. So he spent his life as a Western outside white dude, dedicated his life to this tree, helping reforest, and you can see areas, and in fact his home, and I've met him and I've talked to him, he's like just loaded with Palo Santo, like plants, starts in every stage, and he's planting it out in the wild, trying to reforest it.
And then he helps, and then he deals, lets it naturally dry out.
Because you can't. Otherwise, right? It has to be done that way, and he's really trying to bring back the magic and the medicine to the Ecuadorian people. Like, this is what you have. This is good stuff.
This makes me think of reincarnation, and I wonder if this man was a reincarnated Ecuadorian elder.
Could be.
It was like, I feel called to this land.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's just my...
No, totally. So it's a fascinating story.
That's very cool. Now I want to read this book.
So he's...
Dante.
the one, most responsible for, and he's got a distillery. They do essential oils, all kinds of stuff, and amazing.
Do we sell this book, or is this your personal book?
That's my personal copy.
Okay,
so
this is
that.
awesome.
Yeah, and if you're listening online, the book is called Sacred Smoke: The Magic and Medicine of Palo Santo by a man named David Crow, who, if I'm not mistaken, I think is Canadian.
2012 it was published, so we'll see if it's... Oh, look at this. You got a personally signed copy.
No,
Oh,
I don't
this
know
is
whose
from...
name that is. Yeah. So.
Malcolm stole this book. I'm just kidding. I'm just
Appropriated
kidding.
the book.
It was given. It was given.
Yeah. So.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is... Yes.
Yeah. And so, here's another kind of story to kind of like, just to balance this out. Again, have whatever beliefs you want, but I feel that in our Western culture, we're especially ideological, and I can completely relate from how I was as a vegetarian, and like how reactive and angry I'd get at people that didn't have the same beliefs as me and what I thought we're doing wrong by eating animals and all this stuff. So there's this guy, Will, down in the States. He went to kind of some like U.S. university college campuses, dressed up as a quote-unquote a Mexican. So he had the big sombrero.
Oh, yes.
He had the poncho, he had a little mustache, and he had his maracas, and he's like, so we go around, he had asked all these people, and he's like, so what do you think of my costume? And they're like, oh, it's kind of racist. Like, you're culture appropriating, and all this like negative comments of like, you're a jerk, basically. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then next scene, he's in Mexico.
Right.
And he's like, hey, what do you think of my costume? And everyone's like, you look awesome. This is so great. Like, we love you. This is so good. You know, like, and the point is, it's like, oftentimes we project our own, like, in terms of, and it's like, actually, it's not that at all. If you actually ask the people, and that being said, sometimes it is 100%, right? So this appropriation, to take or make use without authority or right, who grants the authority or right? Sometimes in our kind of, isolated little Western, bubble, we think, oh, you jerk, you bastard, you're taking this away. And it's like, actually, that might not even be the case. It might be a completely different story.
I think this highlights to me the importance of conversation.
Yeah.
Respectful conversation, and coming into a conversation with an open mind and an open heart, and not necessarily clouded by especially judgments and beliefs that we get from the outside, but like really from the heart, what feels right, what doesn't feel right. And that's what I kind of take out of that, because it really is so everything is so circumstantial.
Totally.
And our intention anyways is always loving kindness. We always want to make sure that we're not harming anyone or anything. So that's where we're
totally
coming
in that openness of like, oh, course correct, if not kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, another thing is we need to be open as well to, feedback and conversation. And this, I'm sure, is a beginning of a conversation that is to be continued many times over. But
cool.
Yeah.
Well, right on. Well, thanks for having it.
Yeah, thank you. It's all good. It's good. It's like I say, we have to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
If we don't talk about things, we don't...
Yeah, we don't learn, we don't grow.
We don't learn, we
just kind of stew in our own like thoughts and perceptions, and so.
And there's a real problem with that.
For sure.
When people aren't listening to each other, so.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well,
thank you for listening.
Totally. All right, till next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a like, share this with someone you know who would benefit, and subscribe so you're up to date with all the new episodes coming out. You can shop online at lightseller.ca, as well as visit us in the heart of Bowness in Calgary, Alberta.